We have created jinn and human being. Rather, we have not created jinn and human being for any other purpose. And then Allah introduces the one purpose. That purpose is ubudiyya. Illa liya'budun. Allah says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسِ. We have not created jinn and human beings. And then Allah introduces the only one purpose, which is ubudiyya. Except to worship Allah. Except ubudiyya. What does it mean to fulfill ubudiyya to Allah? First, we have to look at the word abd. Every single one of us is a abd. And when you become a abd willingly to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what does that mean? How do you normally translate the word abd? Slave. But there's something very interesting about being an abd to Allah. Because what do you think of when you think of the word slave? You think of a person who's chains, oppressed, right? Not free, right? This is the concept of ubudiyya, right? Of abd, typically as in slave. But here's the thing about being a slave to Allah. A abd of Allah is actually the free person. The reason is that when you become a slave to Allah, when you become an abd of Allah, you have freed yourself from the servitude to anything else. You have freed yourself from the servitude, the slavery to anything else. So you become free. Now in this path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we said that we came down to this earth. The thing about being on this earth is that, as the angels pointed out, it is going to be a place of struggle. It isn't going to be like Jannah was. So how do we survive? I guess this is a question a lot of people want to know. How do we survive? How do we survive the loss? How do we survive the struggle? How do we survive the pain? How do we survive? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He sent Adam down to this earth, He told him how to survive. He said, when He sent him down, "Go you down, all of you, and if there comes to you, as there will, a guidance from me, whosoever follows my guidance, no fear will be on them, nor shall they grieve." So you see, we have been sent down to this place where yes, there will be struggle, and yes, there will be some spilling of blood, and yes, there will be some spreading of mischief. But Allah has given us the secret of how to survive, and so that we don't have to be afraid or fall into despair. And that is in the guidance of Allah. It is in the remembrance of Allah. Allah tells us, "Ala bi dhikrillahi tatma'innul qulub." Indeed, in the remembrance of God do the hearts find peace and satisfaction. There's one thing that everybody wants. What's the one thing that everybody wants? Christian, Jewish, Muslim, atheist, agnostic. What does everybody want, essentially? Say it again. Happiness. Isn't that what everybody's seeking? The problem is they seek it in the wrong place sometimes. But we all want the same thing. We all want happiness. But where is happiness? Where do you find happiness? What is happiness? Allah tells us that happiness, true happiness, can only be found in His remembrance. And you can look for it anywhere else, you will never find it. In fact, Allah says, وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكًا وَنَحْشُرُهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ أَعْمَى. Whoever turns away from my remembrance, for him will be a miserable, narrow life. You know this idea that happiness is in physical pleasure, or happiness is in money, or happiness is in status. That's not happiness. That's the happiness of cattle. Because what does an animal need to be happy? Only thing an animal needs to be happy is to be fed and to have its physical needs of all different types satisfied. The animal's happy. That, if the human being is like that, if the only type of happiness that the human being is looking for is physical happiness, you know, I eat, I sleep, and I satisfy my physical desires, so I'm good. That's the same as an animal. That human being becomes no different than an animal, because that's the same thing an animal needs. Similarly, an animal doesn't ask before it eats the plant, is this halal, right? The animal doesn't ask before it reproduces, or before, you know, if two animals are reproducing, they don't ask, is this halal? Are we married first? Let's go, you know, do nikah first, right? Animal doesn't go through that process. Animal has an urge, animal follows urge, right? There's no in-between pause to ask, is this allowed? Is this halal? Are we married? Is this okay, right? Animal wants, animal takes. Do we have human beings who act like that? Yeah. We have human beings who act like that. I'm attracted to you. It doesn't matter if I'm married to you. It doesn't matter if you're the same gender. I'm attracted to you. I feel, I obey. I feel, I act. There's no question of morality for an animal, right? But when a human being acts that way, then we become lower than the animals, because an animal doesn't have the ability to look at morality, whereas we do. And if we aren't using that ability, we become lower than the animals. And if we do use that ability, we have the potential to be better than the angels. You know why? Because remember what we said about the angels. We said the angels don't have a choice, right? The angels don't have a choice in worshiping Allah, and you do. So if you use that choice, you have the potential to be better than the angels. But you also have the potential to be lower than the animals. It's in the remembrance of Allah that the hearts find peace. It is not found in physical pleasure. It is not found in the physical world. It can only be found in the remembrance of Allah and in following His guidance. To try to seek it any other place, you will never find it. Now I'm going to, inshallah, just end with some practical, sort of prescription. How do we get through this path? How do we get back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without stumbling, rather without drowning along the way? Because we do all stumble. But as long as we get back up and we keep going, we'll be okay. First is we have to hold tight with every ounce of our self to the remembrance of God. First and foremost, this is in our prayers. Because the Prophet ﷺ told us that the very first thing that you and I will be asked about on the Day of Judgment is our prayers. And he says that if your prayers are okay, then everything else will be okay, that you will have succeeded. And if your prayers are not, then you will have failed. Sometimes we put a lot of effort into other things in our life, but if our prayers aren't in order, we won't be able to be successful.